Welcome, welcome. Let's talk about investing in trading cards. A dubious topic, to be sure. There's one thing I want to get straight first is that there's two ways to make money with trading cards. Well, I guess maybe three ways. The third way is to open up a legitimate trading card business, and then you get to compete with Walmart and sell booster packs for MSRP. That's great. Okay, we're not going to do that. So let's talk about one and two. The first way is by flipping. Flipping is you buy something with the intention to resell it immediately. So generally you're going to buy something at a percent of a market price such that you can immediately turn around and sell it and make money, pocket that money, do it again, and continue this cycle of flipping. Flipping is high effort. It takes a lot of work. Now we can compare that to investing. Investing is not necessarily high effort. Investing, you're able to take money that you already have and park it into trading cards. And then those trading cards sit and they appreciate, and that's how you make money. You eventually need to sell. There's a lot of nuances here. We're going to talk about some of them today. One of the things that I just need to kind of point out and get clear is for investing to work, you have to have a bunch of money up front, which very, very few people do. And I'm going to go through this calculator soon, but if you want to make money with trading cards, I recommend flipping for the vast majority of people. The reason being is because, if you have some relatively small amount of money, let's say like $1,000, you can turn that $1,000 into $1,400 if you are able to buy a collection at 70% of market, resell it, you recoup money, then you take that money, you resell it, you buy another collection. You can keep scaling this, and if you're really good at this, you can go through a collection a week. You can buy $1,000 of cards for $700, sell those. You now have like $1,100, I guess you now have like $900. You buy a $1,200 collection. You sell all of that. You now have, you have $1,100 in your bank account, and you buy, and I have a calculator. We'll go through this in a second, but that's a way that a regular Joe Schmo can take some set amount of money and make more money from it. I also recommend, or am a big fan of doing this with arbitrage with sealed commander decks, right? So Bloomburrow commander decks right now have an inverted expected value if you're able to get them at a good price, which is another thing we need to talk about. I need to make sure I write this down. We need to talk about the good price because that is critical. And so you can buy, open, sell commander decks and make money on that. And that's another form of flipping. Then to make it very clear, comparing that with investing is like, I think that Spider-Man collector booster boxes are undervalued. I'm going to buy $10,000 of them, buying each one around $300 each. And I believe that in the next few years, they will double in price because a lot of collector booster boxes recently have been doubling or have doubled in price. And if that happens, then you get to make this great amount of money. The problem is that 10 grand is parked, right? It's not doing anything. And so now that can be a good option if one, you have no free time, and two, you have 10 grand, right? Because if you don't have any free time, then you can't flip anything. And then two, you have 10 grand. So let's buy some Magic cards. Now, do I recommend buying Magic cards as a form of investment? I don't. Like, the logic in me doesn't. But on the shelves behind me are sealed Magic card products that my business owns that are essentially bought as investments. I'm not intending on it being like a long-term flip. I'm not holding onto these for 5-10 years. I'm holding these onto these for like 1-2 years. But I do invest in some trading cards, but most of my money, I use it in flipping. And so that's the distinction, the flipping, the investing. Today, we're going to talk about both. Let's talk about good prices. Okay. So this is probably the most important part of all of this is the price you get stuff at, because yes, anybody can make money selling a Final Fantasy Collector Booster Box if you bought it at MSRP, which MSRP was like $450, right? And the market price is $1,000. So if you had the connections, if you magically had connections today where you could get things at $450, then yeah, you could be an incredible investor or an incredible flipper. It'd just be easy peasy. Now, the reality is nobody's buying Final Fantasy Collector Booster Boxes today for $450. Even if distribution got a restock and they were their closest partnered stores like MVP, Sports and More, or whoever, they would not be able to get Final Fantasy boxes for $450 each, let alone would they sell them to you for $450 each. So, and so let's talk about that real quick. So who gets the good prices when it comes to trading cards? Well, distribution gets product from the manufacturer, from Wizards of the Coast, and they get it at some price, some agreed upon set price. Then their job is to distribute the product to stores or to partners. Now in Magic, I don't believe that you can get distribution access without having a brick and mortar store. And I know there's some complications and some technicalities with that. But essentially, if you want distribution access, you have to have a brick and mortar store for Magic the Gathering. So what does having a brick and mortar store get you? Well, it gets you things at distribution prices. And that sounds good on paper, and it is good. Distribution prices should basically be the gold standard for your thoughts for investing or if you're trying to flip sealed product. The problem is that so often with Magic the Gathering products, the price ends up being the market price, the price that's being sold on TCG Player and eBay, ends up being pretty close to the distribution price. Some examples of this are things like Tarkir Dragonstorm play booster boxes, or even, let me check, somebody was telling me that Bloomborough play boxes are just $120. And if that's true, yeah, pretty close, $130. That is pretty close to distribution prices for many stores. Now, the biggest stores can get things cheaper than that. In the big stores that you see on eBay that are selling tons and tons of boxes at what is the cheapest price, they are getting it cheaper from distribution. But even then, they're selling it very close to distribution prices. There was a podcast, the Kitchen Table TCG podcast, called May the Zoo Be With You, where they interviewed the banana stand guy. And the banana stand guy is famously somebody who got a hold of lots of collector boxes, lots of play boxes, and was able to do these special promo deals on TCG Player. And I won't link the podcast because I'd have to go and find it. But if you beg for it in the comments, I will find it. Essentially, Louis from Kitchen Table TCG, who's like a regular store, a successful store, but a regular store, is asking this guy who has these incredible deep relationships with distribution and TCG Player, basically like, what are you making? You've got to only be making like pennies on each box. And he's like, no, we're making a few bucks or something like that. And the implication being that they've priced in such that they do net positive after shipping and fees and stuff, but it's not by much. They're really only making like a few dollars each booster box they sell. And so with Magic, what this point is that you can say like, oh, sweet, I'm getting things at distribution cost. But even if you are, some of these giant game stores are also getting things at an even better distribution cost, and they're willing to sell it on eBay and just make like a couple dollars. So, okay, so what do we learn from this? First off, flipping sealed product is very, very hard. It has to be scarce and it has to run out in order for the prices to climb above that distribution price. But the second thing is that if you're intending to invest, it should not be difficult for you to get things close to distribution price, particularly the things that aren't scarce. So if you're trying to invest in play booster boxes or, just regular products, you should be getting things at distribution cost. Now for collector booster boxes, that's trickier. But there's lots of stores and lots of groups and places that offer good deals. Now, Where do you get these good deals? Well, my best advice would be to explore YouTube. I mentioned Kitchen Table TCG. Rogue Deck Builder does a Patreon program. I've run across a number of YouTube channels that are these small stores, and they do kind of wholesale distribution programs where you pay a monthly kind of like Patreon or Discord or whatever fee, and then you get access to wholesale. And those programs are where it's at. And they will, even for things like collector boosters, often they will give you a chance to get some. You're not guaranteed, but like, with Final Fantasy, when I bought it, there was 3 different stores that I was working with. One I had a kind of Patreon subscription to, and the other 2, there's like one local store, and then there's a store that was out in Utah that seemed like they had a decent price online. And the point being is that like, there's these stores are out there that are selling, that have things for great prices. Whether it requires a Patreon fee, whether it requires you hunting them down, whether, it's like, if you think TMNT is going to be a great set, I'm sure you can find reputable stores that have great deals on TMNT products. Like Stomping Ground is a store that they sell a ton of product online. And if you're a savvy consumer, you can know like, hey, their TMNT drop is happening this day, this time. I'm going to be at my computer ready to go. Right. And so there's lots of directions you could go, but I'll say that you want to get, you don't want to be going just straight to tcgplayer.com and buying stuff or on eBay. People will be able to sell it cheaper, whether it's through their Patreon program or directly from their website, since they don't have to pay the overhead and fees. And sometimes you can avoid sales tax, which is really important when you get to the nitty gritty, particularly for investing. So now we're talking, so all this has been about investing basically, but getting the good price is going to be critical for investing. Getting the good price is critical for flipping too. But with flipping, I'm usually thinking about collections or commander deck sets that you can get close to distribution pricing. I've shown off in some of my YouTube videos before that you can find Dragonstorm commander deck sets for basically distribution cost, just in the wild on the internet. So it's not like it's a rare, hard thing. You don't have to go through a paywall to get access to this stuff, but the paywall does make it easier. I do endorse the paywall. So, okay. Now we have a calculator. I've got a Google Sheets spreadsheet up here, and I want to talk about flipping math, and I want to talk about investing math. So I've kind of, hinted at this earlier, but let's talk through flipping math, which is at the top of this Excel sheet that I'm showing off. Flipping math, the idea is you start off with a bundle of cash. You then take that cash and you buy a collection at 70%. So let's say that you have $1,000 to start. You're able to buy a collection that's about $1,400. If you're buying that collection at 70%, you can give them $1,000. They'll call it a day. After shipping and fees, hopefully, things can go wrong. I've bought collections and I've made no money before. After all the shipping and fees and effort and time, I got paid nothing. But usually, most of the times that I bought collections, I've made more than 10%. I've made 20 or 30 or 40% on the collection. Especially now with tax time, man. Cards are appreciating. Right now, cardboard is pricey. If you're thinking about building a commander deck, if you can wait 5 months, it's going to be a lot better on your wallet. But I understand if you can't wait 5 months. Anyways, I digress. So your first collection you buy, you spend $1,000 to buy a $1,400 collection. When you net it, let's say that you get 10% net, you're going to net that 140-ish bucks. You now have $1,140. You use that to buy your second collection. That second collection is $1,600. When you sell that collection, you net $163. You now have $1,300 to buy your third collection. So, and this keeps going. And this isn't a perfect world, right? Where there's the exact value of collection that your budget accounts for. So not realistic, but it illustrates the point, which is that After you've sold your 6th collection, you have doubled your money, more than doubled your money. You're at $2,200. And that is really cool because think to yourself, like, how quickly could I flip 7 collections or 6 collections? Sorry. If you're a level 4 seller on TCG Player, the answer should be, well, I should say, depending on how much time you put in. If you put in 10 to 15 hours a week of work, the answer could be 7 weeks. If you buy a collection a week and that collection has a few hundred cards, and you should be able to list those, sell those. I guess that's not quite fair because it does take some time for things to sell. This business is a lot easier if you just start with more cash up front. Having money, being able to come from external sources, like if your day job can help fund your trading card business in the beginning, because if you start off with $5,000, that $5,000 can turn into, $6,000 way faster than $1,000 can turn into $2,000, right? Like $5,000 can turn into $6,000 with one collection buy if you're a little bit lucky, where $1,000 turning into $2,000 could take like 4 to 6 collection buys. So, the starting capital matters a lot. But if you start with $1,000, if you're able to sell through 6 collections, it'll take a little bit of time, maybe a couple months, but you double your money. Which this is what we need to keep in mind, because let's compare this to investing of what it takes to double your money. It's a totally different ballgame. So flipping is cool. I'm a big endorser, big fan of flipping. But let's talk about investing. So investing math I have here at the bottom. I can zoom in. That's easier to see. Okay, so investing math. First off, we need a reality check. If you're planning on holding on to stuff for 10 years and then selling, that could be really cool. There are some things that are 10 years old in Magic the Gathering that are quite expensive now, like Kaladesh, that you could have bought for $100. Now it's selling for like $300 or $400 at one point. Triple your money in 10 years. That's pretty good. There's also sets that came out 10 years ago or even 15 years ago that are essentially the same price they were like 10 years ago or whatever. I haven't broken down all of the numbers for like 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, what the profit would have been if you invested $10,000, if you invested $10,000 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 5 years ago, what would you have today if you bought, like $1,000 a month of product? I could do that. Once again, if that's something you'd really like to see, let me know in the comment section. What I do have is a little sample of 1 year ago, because what's kind of, for this investor math portion of my spreadsheet, what I essentially have is a calculator that all depends on how long you think it's going to take to double your money. So let's pretend that the standard is once my money doubles, I sell. And the question is, how long does it take to double your money? And to answer that question, let's take a look at all the collector boxes that came out in the past year. Or last year. Start with Aether Drift. Aether Drift came out a year ago. It is pre-selling or selling for around 230. Today, it is selling for around 230. So there's no gain in Aether Drift. I don't know how many years it will take for Aether Drift to double in value. And this gets into another topic, which is that Wizards of the Coast is not necessarily incentivized to create collector boxes that do double in value in 2, 3, 4 years. They're really incentivized to create products that will be super hype up front and then become completely uncollectible because Wizards of the Coast does not make money on the secondary market. They make money on release day, if that makes sense. Anyways, I can go more. I do plan on making a video about that topic, but that is not what we're talking about today. So anyways, I don't know how long it's going to take for Aether Drift to double in value, but it's not 1 year. It's been 1 year, has not risen in value at all. What about Dragonstorm? Dragonstorm, it looks like a year ago you could have gotten these for $250. They're now $340. It's a decent gain. At one point, these boxes were 400, which is not quite double, but decent gains, but not doubling. It has not quite been a year, but it's getting there. Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy's MSRP was $450 a box, although they never sold for that. There's many that sold for around $600 before it came out. Excuse me. I bought quite a few for $600 each, and then boom, the price spikes all the way to $1,200. Some sold at the top for $1,400, and now we are around $1,000, which is kind of funny because now it hasn't doubled, but it also hasn't been a year yet. But it hasn't doubled from its original price. Obviously, you can make a lot of money selling a $600 box for $1,000, but the point being, I don't know if it's going to double in a year. We'll see. Edge of Eternities. You could have bought this for $240. It is now $450. Not quite doubled, but it has raised quite a bit in price. Avatar: The Last Airbender. I believe... yeah, some people buying these for $900 each. That's crazy. The lowest price you could have gotten these was like around $360, which is very close to what it is now. So, you know, it's only been out for a few months, has not appreciated. Spider-Man came out before that. Spider-Man, people have bought low. Yeah, it's at its low right now of $330. Same thing with Avatar. So with this flipping math, the years till they double, it's not one. And I don't think anybody's arguing that it's one. Nobody's like, you know, collector booster boxes should double every year. But if they did double every year, this is the math of what it would look like. Let's say that you put in $400 a month. That means that every year you're putting in $4,800, almost $5,000. Then let's say that they double. Let's say that the $400 you spent every month doubles to $800 of value. After shipping and fees, you are only collecting 80% of that, let's say. It's probably a little bit more than 80%, but let's just say 80%. So if everything doubles, you're getting an 80% return, which is super cool. But like we established, it's probably not 1 year that you're going to double your money. Let's say that it's 2 years. If it's 2 years, you're averaging a 20% return each year. And a big part of this is because of shipping and fees. But if your investment in Sealed Magic doubles in 2 years, you have gotten a 20% yearly return, which is good. But once again, I don't think these things double in 2 years. I don't think Aether Drift's going to double in 2 years. I'm not sure about Tarkir. Hopefully Final Fantasy, because I've got heavy bags. What about 3 years? 3 years, suddenly the yearly percent return is down to 8.89%, which is just slightly above what the S&P 500 and like what index funds have done for the past 100 years, which is averaging 7%. And let's say it takes 4 years. Well, now you're down to 5% returns, which is certainly nothing to write home about. So what's the point? The point is that investing in trading cards does not make sense unless you're very confident the value is going to surge dramatically quite quickly. I have felt this way. I felt this way about Final Fantasy, and that's why I bought like 5 of them. You know, not crazy number. You know, there's people who buy, people who sell way more. Like, let's check out these listings. Like, whoever this person is, MP Business, they got 16 of these. Man, so cool. Anyways, so it's like I have 5 Final Fantasy collector booster boxes. I think they are going to double in a year, which now, excuse me, we're counting down for like 3 more months or 4 more months or something like that. All the quote unquote investments I have are things that either I have for fun. Like, do I think Lauren, the sealed collector booster box that somebody commented on, do I think that box is going to double in a year? Yeah, I do. I do think it will. But even if it doesn't, I have it and it's cool and it's sitting on a shelf, and me making, if it takes 4 years to double, me making 5% a year, that's fine because I like it. And that's the thing, right? That is the padding to all of this investing in trading card stuff, right? Is that at the end of the day, we don't mind the returns not being that good because it's so fun to buy trading cards. And that's kind of the secret sauce to all of the trading card investment community bros thing, is that the returns don't have to be that good because it's a fun thing. Now, sometimes the returns are good. And I mean, the returns in other trading card games like Pokemon have been so good that like Wall Street Journal was writing articles, op-eds about how Pokemon's outperformed the S&P 500. But Magic is not Pokemon. Unfortunately, we all wish it was, but it's not, unfortunately. And so what's the point? Wrapping it up, there's a big difference between flipping and investing. Investing only works if you have a ton of money just sitting around and you don't have the time to flip. I'm a big proponent of flipping because unless you're already rich, if you want to make good money, the quick way is to flip. And like I showed, I mean, however long it takes you to sell 6 collections, let's say that that's 6 months, that is a relatively risk-free 6 months to double your money, as opposed to flipping, where we just established it's much higher risk and the odds of it working in a year to double your money are very, very low. So anyways, flipping is just going to be better money, but it's just more work. Investing works if you have very high confidence that the stuff is going to really perform well. You kind of do need to pick and choose, and you need to be good at it. You need to know that Tarkir Dragonstorm collector boxes are a good buy, and that Aetherdrift are not, and that Bloomburrow is going to do well, but Duskmourn won't do as well. Which I don't think that this is unreasonable to ask. I think that lots of people could pick and choose and do decent. I think Final Fantasy was like an obviously going to outperform, and that $600 for a Final Fantasy collector booster box at the time was a great deal. I knew that, and so I put money that I had. And I was responsible about it, not credit cards and stuff. But anyway, maybe one last thought before we go. Credit cards. There's a lot of people who've realized that you can get a credit card that has 0% interest for 18 months. Sweet. Let's max that out, buy stuff because the price is going to go up before then, and then we can sell it and make a profit. Yes. Very risky. I would say that is something I would endorse if you can eat the loss. If your family's budget or your budget is such that, these boxes didn't double. In fact, their value just stayed flat. I now need to eat a 20% loss because of shipping and fees before the credit card interest kicks in. You need to be able to eat that. And so, if it's a 10 grand credit card limit, you need to be able to fork over 2 grand of your own personal money to make up for your gamble. But the upside is quite large, right? If you put in 10 grand into, at the time, Final Fantasy collector booster boxes, like if you did that this year for The Hobbit. Now, keep in mind that Lord of the Rings collector boxes didn't double actually that quickly. It took years. But if you're like all in on the Hobbit set coming out this year and you get a 10 grand credit card with 0% interest for 18 months, first tip, make sure you're auto paying that credit card. Otherwise, all the interest becomes due before those 18 months. The second tip is, yeah, sure. Maybe you get a 10 grand limit. You max out this card and set it and forget it, pay minimums because the price of the box is going to go up in 18 months. That's probably true. But like I said, you need to be prepared at the end of those 18 months that if the price hasn't gone up, you're going to be forced to sell. And if you have to sell at a loss, you need to be ready to eat that loss. So anyways, some thoughts about investing. I'm not going to be the best person to speak to the people who really do have 10s, 20s, hundreds of thousands of dollars to deploy. Although I think those kinds of people, I think investing in cardboard, particularly Magic, is quite perilous. Pokemon might make more sense, but even then, I mean, stocks and bonds and stuff are just so easy. It's a click of a button. If you're going to invest $100,000 in sealed trading cards, you got to store it. You got to figure out how to liquidate it at some point. I mean, and in Magic is just harder than Pokemon. Pokemon, it's not as hard to liquidate. So I'm speaking to the people who make normal people amount of money, who have normal people amount of savings, which isn't a lot, and they're looking to make money. And for those people, I would say flipping is the way to go. Thanks for watching, especially if you made it this far. Please subscribe. My name's Nick with Capital Catalyst. Thanks for being here.